The agency says the funds are being used to operate, maintain and improve roads, as well as to service debt incurred for toll road projects. This as new toll tariffs are due to kick in tomorrow of a 5% increase, which the road agency says is in line with the consumer price index. For more on the story, we're joined via Skype by the CEO of the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA, Wayne Duvenage. A very good morning to you. Wayne, what do you make of the new toll tariffs that are due to kick in tomorrow?
Well, as they say, this is a 3% increase. This is more CPI related. But if you look at the toll tariff increases over the last, since 2008, you'll see 110% increase of these toll tariffs. So they keep going up by CPI plus a little bit each year. And it is now excessive, very expensive to take a trip just down to Mpumalanga and back is going to cost you 280 Rand additional each way. Some of our tolls, gantries or our toll plazas are at 99 Rand, the one at Makondo, going down to the Mpumalanga. So it's very expensive. The motorist is an easy target. And we believe that many of these long-distance toll routes are well overpriced. The concessionaires are making a lot of money out of them, and it's time for those tariffs to be reduced, which is why we are going to court to get all of those, all of the increases and the revenues and the costs of these toll concessions. So, yeah, again, the motorist gets hit hard. Now we know there's a new fuel price, extra fuel levies coming. Yep. It's not looking good.
There's analysis that says that the Minister of Finance put on some hefty taxes onto your liquor products as a way of discouraging people from drinking liquor instead of just completely blocking it off. Would you think it's the same case here to encourage people from traveling within provinces?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I think the state has continuously increased fuel levies and tolls for a long time now. But it's becoming, they've pushed that envelope too far. It's becoming quite excessive. As I said, the motorist, when you look at excise duties on vehicles, import duties, you look at the fuel levies, the taxes on vehicle purchases and tolls, it adds up to quite a lot, but it's not necessarily a deterrent. And the sad thing is that we don't have good alternatives in this country. You know, public transport has not improved over time compared to other cities. I'm not even talking about developed cities. You know, I think what's important is that the price that we pay as a country, the poorest are hit the hardest because they have to fork out a lot of money because they too have to pick up the costs in taxis and buses on these extra levies that are applied to motorists. So, you know, the sign of a developed society and country from a transport point of view is not when the poor drive to work in cars. It's when the rich use public transport, and there are no public transport alternatives. Certainly not the Gautrain appears to be that, but it's not. It's a very narrow corridor.
And it's also really confusing at a time when the president is encouraging or really promoting the automotive industry in the country. But on the other hand, you're putting in measures and legislation to discourage South Africans from getting cars.
Yes, and even worse so is the world is moving to electric vehicles and we are falling well behind. And countries like Kenya already have an electric vehicle policy in place. We should be encouraging the switch to electric vehicles. Some manufacturers will not be making petrol internal combustion engine vehicles in the next number of years, few years actually. And we're getting left behind. In fact, we're charging heavy levies, and we will not be in a good position to take advantage of the conversion to electric vehicle transportation. So I think our government needs to really unpack and review its automotive strategy, its public transport strategies. It's been talking about this for many years, and it hasn't got very far in the last decade or so.
Yeah, and just back to SANRAL, they say that the funds are being used to operate, maintain and improve roads as well as to service debt incurred for the toll road project. Is this correct?
Well, SANRAL, I think you've got to give them kudos in one area. They do build good roads. The national roads that they manage are generally in good shape. The problem is that they've run up unnecessary debt. The whole e-toll debacle was overpriced by double the amount. They should never have borrowed 21 billion rand for the 186 kilometer upgrade. That was a 9 billion rand project, and had they not introduced the debacle of e-tolls, they would have already paid that infrastructure off, those bonds off, if they'd have just increased the fuel levy by 10 cents and done it that way. So now they are servicing a lot of debt, yes. They've borrowed a lot of money where they shouldn't have. And this is the price that we pay when they make bad decisions of this nature. And it's hard to undo that. So now there's less money for maintenance. And they continuously turn to these public-private partnerships. But the problem is they're not transparent about those. And the public-private partnerships need to see them, because when you have to start to realize that the operators seem to be making a lot more money than it should.
You've mentioned all the other levies coming into play, motorists facing tough times. How will consumers manage with these increases? Well,
any increases today is not a good thing. Consumers are struggling as it is. These fuel levies and additional toll costs get passed on to the consumer. Most of our goods are not moved by rail as they used to be. They're moved by road. So this is not good for the price of goods now. And you know that our fuel price, 60% of it, 62% in fact, has got nothing to do with the basic fuel price. It's got everything to do with all these fuel levies and additional costs and transport costs and retail margins and wholesale margins and road accident fund. So we overpaid a lot when you compare our fuel price to the rest of the world. We should not be paying in this now going up to 16 Rand 33 cents inland fuel price. It's really too high. This should be a lot less, but unfortunately, government continues to increase these levies, and it's not good for consumers.
I just want to ask you something in relation to an event that took place this week. The one social discussion that brought OUTA out to the fore was the conversation about e-tolls, and such complaints coming up this week that for the first time, the Premier of Gauteng didn't mention e-tolls in his SOPA. Were you following this? Your thoughts about it?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of confusion. The president gave Minister Fikile Mbalula an ultimatum in 2019 to resolve the e-toll impasse, to find the alternatives. Many of us have made presentations. There are alternatives. It is now 2021 and still nothing. And as you say, the Premier was very vocal in the past. And it seems to be when it's election years, they make all the noises and they beat the drum about pulling the plug on e-tolls. And once the elections are over, then they don't say much. So, quite frankly, I think this has been a classic case of the public standing their ground. They have been defiant against the scheme. So it has completely failed for government. There are only about 15% now of motorists paying their e-toll bills. It is struggling, and they have no option but to end the scheme. But I think they're still enjoying the 50 million rand or so that is still coming into the scheme, well below the almost 300 million they needed every month at this stage. But it's quite confusing that they are struggling to make this final decision to pull the plug. Quite frankly, we don't really care, because you can increase those tariffs as much as you like. 0 rands paid plus a 3% increase is still 0 rands paid by 82% or 85% of the motorists. So I think we must congratulate the motorists and the public for standing their ground in what we can term as one of the most successful civil defiance campaigns in our new South Africa.
What's worrying is that there's no resolution here. But just tell us about your preparations for going to court. What arguments are you going to forward?
Well, on the e-toll matter, we were ready to go to court in 2019. Government pulled the plug on that legal challenge, and quite frankly, this scheme cannot summons the public anymore, because that court case hangs in limbo. They have really not done themselves any favors there. They've really messed up their whole argument now as a result of that. The Credit Bureau Association have told SANRAL there will be no blacklisting of people that do not pay their e-toll bills. So they are on a hiding to nothing with this regard. So the test case scenario still waits in limbo. And we believe there's no real case for them anymore. Nonetheless, we wait until they either pull the plug or we'll fight this to the end.
Thank you so much for talking to us today.
A pleasure. All the best.
Wayne Duvenage there from OUTA, Organization Undoing Tax Abuse.